tough one, that, I thought. It got better, but it didn't start very well.
It was a bit bitty, wasn't it? It was a bit all over the place.
As we said, there were no humdingers or obvious ways in. No. So cost of living, with that side order of a Tory minister who can't afford to pay his mortgage.
Yes, that's a good way of doing it, by talking about George Freeman, who said that he resigned last year as a minister. He's now saying that it's because he could not afford the mortgage rise from £800 a month to £2,000 a month on his ministerial salary of £118,000.
Whereas if he reverts to being a mere MP on $86,500, he is allowed to take on lucrative second
I'm not quite sure,
jobs.
really. I don't really understand the maths there, because obviously he is allowed to take on...
Well, if he's a lawyer, if he's a barrister, I don't know what he is, but barristers, for example, can make a ton of money.
I'm not sure if he is a barrister.
On the side. And, even Dominic Raab, who's got the brains of a sofa, can get very lucrative little side gigs off the back of being a former deputy prime minister. So I presume he can.
I presume he's now going to be, and I haven't checked the register of interest, should have done that in the break. I'm sure he is now taking on another job to pay that mortgage. But
well, he's also had a divorce. He had a tricky divorce in 2014, I think. So listen, this will make you laugh because you're from a younger generation, Natasha. But I have some sympathy for him. Don't laugh yet. It's we all take out mortgages that are roughly the most we can afford.
Sure.
And one of the great causes of the 2008 financial crisis was the slightly naive belief that if someone was prepared to lend you that amount of money, then you must be able to pay it back, because they wouldn't lend you the money if they didn't think you could pay it back. So even if it seemed like quite a lot of money, you were confident you'd be able to pay it back, because otherwise they wouldn't have lent it to you. But then, of course, reality came to bite, and the way that mortgages had changed. So I have sympathy for someone who cuts his cloth according to having certain outgoings and a certain income, to paraphrase Mr. McCorber, and then when things go up by that much, when they nearly double, there's not enough. You're running out a month before you've run out of money.
It's a lot of money.
Yes, it is, even though it starts off in a place that most people can only dream of financially.
Yeah, and I think obviously Starmer was, right to go in on something, because I think he's tapped into what, I'm sure will be a key part of the next election, is that Labour's argument will be that Rishi Sunak doesn't understand you. He doesn't understand that your mortgage is going up, that your bills are going up, that your food is going up, and that there is a big cost of living crisis that the government has largely been unable to do quite a lot about. And he might be able to point to say, well, inflation's fallen, but people are still worse off. And that's what I think he's trying to tap into. And Rishi Sunak doesn't get how hard it is for you, and it's a tricky position for the government to be in, because they've got to project this message of hope and optimism that things are getting better without essentially
without admitting that things are bad.
Things are pretty bad right now, exactly, and
really
acknowledging, which is a really hard balance to strike.
Do you think that there is a threshold above which you can't really play the politics of envy card? Because if there is, Rishi Sunak is almost certainly above it. It doesn't quite work coming from him. Accusing when you're one of the richest people in the world, accusing others of politics of envy doesn't quite work, I don't think.
It is, and it's obviously something that he will face accusations of in the general election. I'm sure that Labour will go and say that this guy earns so much money, how can he possibly understand the struggles that you're going through? The Conservatives' argument is, well, he could be earning a lot of money as a banker somewhere else, and he's not. Like George Freeman.
Yes, indeed. A quick shout to Mark's mum, who's just popped down to Iceland in Warrington to see if she can find Phil. So we might be talking to Phil before the end of the programme.
Give her a microphone.
I'll read this text as well. Stephen Flynn making an increasing habit of going after both of the major party leaders, which shouldn't be a surprise. Anyone who understands Scottish politics, it's not surprising at all. But for people who view politics through a Westminster-shaped lens, it can sometimes see a bit jarring, because it's different from what the previous fella did. Didn't go after Labour anywhere near as much as Flynn does. But this text points out that we may be paying slightly higher taxes in Scotland, but we're getting an excellent health service, free prescriptions, additional money for families, baby boxes, NHS dentistry, free travel for young people, and a free university education. Those are quite powerful points.
Do you really think the NHS in Scotland is fine?
Well, he lives there. We don't. But the rest of the list is inarguable.
Some fair points there.
So does Sunak think that works? He clearly does. The question about square one, we've talked about this before. My listeners find it very odd that he keeps coming back to this idea Labour will take you back to square one when most people would think that life in 2024 was worse than it was in 2010.
Yeah, we still don't know what square one is and where he's taking us back to. And I think the Conservatives' argument, which I think is very strong, I think what Rishi Sunak touched on today, was that you might not be able to trust Sir Keir Starmer. And I think that is a right argument that they should be going into. But this back to square one business, I don't think anybody really understands what it actually means and what it's trying to say. And Keir Starmer is again, having to bat away accusations that he's not trustworthy, that he's a flip-flopper, that he changes his mind, that he says one thing to his party and then he says another thing to his MPs, and he's changed his position on a lot of things. And sadly, that is the way of politics. You have to change your mind on a lot of things, and you have to, react to the situation. But obviously, Labour have got in a huge muddle about this £28 billion worth of spending, which they have had to row back on. And they mentioned that Rishi Sunak mentioned our LBC interview in one of his answers, saying that Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, did support the tax rises, and now she's saying it's a scorched earth policy that she's unfortunately going to have to inherit. And it is hard, because when you're going to go into government, you've essentially got to shut up and stop making big promises that you can't deliver, especially when public services are what they are and the public finances are what they are.
But there must be, we make a mistake sometimes of thinking, well, they must be polling it or they must be focus grouping it, and this back to square one thing must be working for them. Maybe it's not. Maybe they've just not got much else. And
I don't know. Every minister that I hear has been told to you hear them saying it on the airwaves. It sounds like it's something that is resonating with focus groups, and I think there is a bit of a risk. I think that's what the Conservatives will try to play up in the coming months, that there's a risk of going to vote for Keir Starmer. I mean, there was a caller actually earlier on LBC that said something like "better the devil you know," and I think the Conservatives will use that and play on that and say, look, this guy, look, the other argument for Labour is, well, better the devil you know, but actually it's pretty poor under this devil.
Well, not the best. PMQs, not the worst.
No, it wasn't fantastic,
Middling.
was it?
Thank you, Natasha.